Hello and welcome to Real Chat with Kat, the podcast dedicated to igniting your entrepreneurial spirit and empowering you to conquer new horizons. In this podcast, we chat with inspiring entrepreneurs on their journey to success through some amazingly insightful and expansive conversations. These episodes thrive on thought-provoking chats where our guests fearlessly explore their path to success, sharing their experiences, failures, and triumphs. No topic is off limits as we deep dive into the talked about and not so talked about pieces it takes to build a business, overcome limiting beliefs, deal with personal struggles, and everything in between that shapes our lives and our businesses. I'm your host, Kat Polsinelli, creator and founder at The Lotus Effect, where we believe that success is not just about strategies and tactics, it's about cultivating a powerful mindset and creating customized business operations that align with you and your true purpose. Whether it's mastering time management, improving productivity, enhancing leadership skills, or simply fostering a growth-oriented mindset, we'll provide you with the tools and strategies to flourish in both your business and personal life. I'm so excited to have you join us today in this episode, so get ready to feel empowered and inspired as we learn together and from one another on how to rise above challenges, break through limitations, and unlock our full potential. Let's dive in. Hello, and thank you so much for joining me today on this episode of Real Chat with Kat. I am so excited to have you here with us today, and I have a fantastic guest who we just spent like 20 minutes pre-recording, just chit-chatting. So I'd love to welcome Angela Daye to the podcast. So Angela, thank you so much for being a part of the podcast today.
Thank you very much for having me.
I'm so excited about this. We're going to have an awesome conversation, you guys. I absolutely adore her energy. So, Angela, do us all a favor then, and please tell everybody who you are, what it is that you do, and what got you into your space.
Oh, that's start with the tough questions, right? So I'm Angela Daye. I'm based in Scotland. I'm just not too far from Glasgow, and I am a health kinesiologist, or I believe you guys are known as natural bioenergetics specialists. So there's slight interesting changes depending on which country you're in as to what you're allowed to call what we do. But it's basically energetic kinesiology. But I also do coaching and hypnotherapy and a number of other things as well. And how did I get into it? My last corporate role paid me to go away, and I thought, let's try something different. So having
There you
taken
go.
redundancy from financial services, I thought, why not? Let's have a look. Let's have a play and see where this can take us. And actually, it's a lot more fulfilling than working for somebody else just in spreadsheets. So yeah, that's me.
Spreadsheets, definitely. I mean, don't get me wrong. I do have
I
some
do love a
friends
good
that
spreadsheet, but I like
do
doing more than
love.
spreadsheets.
Yeah. Okay, so for our listeners, you got to do me a favor. You got to break down what you call yourself when you talk about the bioengineer. Like you got to, because I know some people are like,
Sure.
that's a big word, and I don't
It
understand what that
is.
means. So
Yes. So it's called natural bioenergetics, and I still work out how all that means and what it means and everything else. So I still use health kinesiology, and because I'm a member of the Kinesiology Federation in the UK, I'm sticking with that name personally. But I know that a lot of my other colleagues have started to migrate over to the new name.
interesting.
But yeah, so I'm still calling it kinesiology because I'm finding that that's what people are looking for. And it's
Hmm.
more the energetic side of things than the muscle mechanics, which I believe is why the word is being changed where you guys are. So yeah, so
Makes
it's tuning
sense.
into the body and asking the body, what do you want? So bypassing that conscious mind that normally talks a lot of nonsense, tells us lies, and gets in the way. And it's tuning into your body's energy and to your subconscious and unconscious mind to say, how can we be better? What do we need? What do we need to let go of? How do we clear out all the stuff that doesn't need to be there that we're carrying around really protectively that would be much easier and much more beneficial for ourselves if we put it down?
I love that. That was a
Does
really
that
great
explain it a bit better?
that was a really great breakdown. I love that. Now, what I would love to know even more is, because I know that you do work with the energetics and everything. And I've had a couple of people that I've chatted with, but I feel like every person that I have talked with, working with energetics means something different to them as far as what they actually do in their business or with their clients. So can you describe for us or kind of give us an explanation on what does that mean for you when you say you work with the energetics of the body?
So the first thing I do is using the traditional Chinese medicine aspects of things. So you've got all the meridians in your body. If you've ever looked at acupuncture or acupressure, all those points in your body are all connected through lines effectively. So the energy flows through the meridians, through those lines. What I do first of all is make sure that the energy is balanced across the meridians. And then once we've got to that point, it is simply asking the body, what do you want to work on today? Where are we going? And then usually the client has come to me with an overarching goal or an overarching theme of what they want to work on. They don't
Mm-hmm.
have to, but usually there's a concern that they've come to me for, and it's just purely, okay, body, what do we want to do today? Where are we going? We're on this magical mystery tour of helping you feel better.
I love that you talked about going back to the Chinese and the meridian lines because one, no one I have ever talked to has talked about it from this perspective, right? A lot of people use
Okay.
like alchemy, or they talk about being able to feel people's energies, and that's how they kind of focus. So I love that you have this like ancient understanding and this way of working with the body because okay, I have an obsession with like some of the ancient times and some of the really unique things that they did that really did help people, these shamans and these medicine people and the things that they did in their cultures. And yeah, I'm the one that geeks out on TV watching the archaeology behind it and like understanding it because while modern medicine, it can be wonderful to some effects and some, things that we do have, some of the things that these people did and the way that they tuned in to me makes so much more sense. And we have gotten so far disconnected from
Mm.
that, I feel like, in our society. So for anyone that doesn't understand what meridian lines are, can you give them a little bit of I know I keep asking you to go deeper and deeper. Or is there some place that they could possibly look it up that they would be able to kind of explore this to understand what meridian lines even mean within the body?
Yes, I guess it's probably looking at anything to do with traditional Chinese medicine is going to cover all of that. There's a lot around acupuncture. There's a lot around acupressure. So the difference between acupuncture and acupressure is one's got a needle and one doesn't. So what I do is a lot more gentle from the perspective that we're using our fingers to hold points on the body, and we're
Mm.
not sticking pins in. Now, there's nothing wrong with sticking pins in. I'm just not trained to do that. So that's the difference on that perspective. But as for reading about it and researching it, there's so much online that you could just go and have a look and see how it all hangs together. The meridians that we predominantly deal with are the 7 pairs. So there's 14 meridian lines that we deal with as the big ones. There are many more minor meridian lines. And I must admit, I've not gone into any great detail on the research from that perspective because what we do is so wide and covers in
Hmm.
a lot of other things as well. So we've also got subtle energy bodies as to which layer of your aura are we talking about. We've also got chakras and things like that as well. So
Hmm.
I've not gone into great depth. But yes, if you're looking at the meridian lines and the Shen cycle and the coast cycle are the key ones that we play with.
Okay.
And manipulate's not the right word for it, but make sure that they're balanced and that there's no blockers and there's not too much energy in one and too little in the other. So it's probably not quite answering your question, but there's huge amounts of information out there about all of these aspects. And I think probably the key thing is that it's good to be aware of that's what we're using, but we don't
Hmm.
need to go into great detail to say, well, the stomach meridian has got this. And it's also good to remember that just because it's the stomach meridian doesn't mean there's something specifically wrong with your stomach, the organ. And that's sometimes a bit of a scary thought of, oh, we're working in the stomach meridian. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with your physical organ of the stomach. That's the energy line that we're working through and where it runs from underneath your eyes down to your toes. And it's just about working out
Oh.
how we're going with that.
Okay, that is super interesting because I wasn't aware of how that worked. Okay. See, you guys, I learn things all the time. This is why I love these conversations. Okay, so let me ask you this. With your clients that you work with, and I know that you said, a lot of times people kind of have these overarching ideas or what they're kind of coming to you with. Do you notice that when you work with them and start working with the body, that a lot of times that it lines up with what they're thinking, or does it tend to end up being something else?
Yes, it's both and it's fascinating where we go with things and what we are so fixated on as being the problem
Mm.
is maybe just touching the surface or it's how it's manifesting. And I talk about there's so many times where if you've got physical pain, it started off somewhere emotionally or psychologically, perhaps even spiritually, and it's then manifesting now as physical pain in your body. So I've got one client who has told me I can talk about him quite openly. I'm not going to name him, even though he said that's fine. But he came to me with major problems in his feet. It's got a long, big, technical, um, medical definition and name and everything else. But basically, he's got arthritis in his toes to the point where
Oh,
they don't bend anymore, and he's in massive pain all the time. But as we started to delve into it, we've never actually done any specific work on the pain in his feet. It's coming back to psychological stuff from when he was a teenager. It's coming back to what
wow.
was happening in his home life. And it's very interesting because a lot of what I do is I'm testing silently and I'm asking the client's body. And I might say to him, so something happened when you were 16 years old. Oh, well, that's when I left home and joined the Navy because so much was going on at home. I didn't want to be at home anymore. He
Oh,
hadn't told me
wow.
any of that, but that was what was coming up through the testing. So yeah, we've delved into some pretty deep emotional stuff that is not where he probably, well, he did come to me saying, I know that there's something else going on, but I don't know what it is. So he was very much open to seeing where things went, which is my ideal client, someone that's completely open and willing to go wherever the testing takes us.
Hmm.
But and he's already telling me that people are telling him, why are you not limping? What happened to your limp? Why are you walking easier? And massively reduced down on his pain medication as well. So talking about what happened when he was 16 is obviously working.
That is so awesome. I love this so much. And I feel like this has been even at the beginning of 2024, like this has been an overarching theme where I've had several conversations that keep coming back to understanding the traumas of our past and how they continue to affect us way long into the future. And when we get into adulthood and we start to focus on all these other current traumas, we don't even have time to focus or think about. And a lot of times we've even blocked out the
Mhm.
traumas that we dealt with when we were younger or through specific situations. And yet it is so interesting to me how the body like holds on to it and will not let go,
Yeah.
right? It's like we say, oh, no, it's fine. That happened years ago. I don't care anymore. It doesn't matter. And the body's like, but it does.
Yeah, so what happened years ago? Did you put it in a box, put a lid on it, and then put a book on top to say I'm not looking in there again? And has that now started to erode the box and things are starting to fester? What did you do with it at that time? We've got some ways of working where we actually look at trauma that's been lodged in the biofield at a certain age. So if something happened that was traumatic to you when you were 10 years old and it's lodged in your biofield, that part of your biofield has never healed, has never progressed, and has never moved forwards. So, from that perspective, there could be elements of your emotional maturity and intelligence that hasn't grown beyond 10 years old because it got stuck. So, every time
Mhm.
something even remotely similar happens, you revert back to 10-year-old you and what was going on emotionally at the time for you then, and you're dealing with it as a 10-year-old and not as an adult. So until you clear it out and allow your biofield to heal, it's always going to come back to, well, that's how we're going to respond. And just because something went bad with that particular thing when you were 10 doesn't mean it's going to happen now. But you've got to that point where you're almost predicting, well, that's what happened when I was 10. That person stopped talking to me because I broke their toy.
Mm-hmm.
So this person's going to stop talking to me because something went wrong. And that doesn't always happen in the same way. There might be elements of it. You might have to go and apologize, but they're not necessarily going to cut you out of their lives because something's gone wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that made sense as a bit of an analogy there, but
No, it does.
voices.
It's beautiful. And it makes so much sense because you hear a lot of people talk about loving on your younger self, giving
Mm,
grace to your younger self. And really when you think about it from that space of specific things may not have been able to mature along with you, I immediately think about some of the people that I have met in the past and how some things I'm like, all right, pretty good. They got their stuff going. And then something else happens and I'm like, wow, what just happened? And to me, that makes so much sense because if there is
mm,
something specific that is stuck, that is kept whatever from completely maturing, then they're acting from that space. And that to me just that makes so much sense on so many levels. I mean, because really, if you think about it, I mean, people say it all the time, right? Well, they're acting like a child. Well, they're acting like a 10-year-old, where they're not acting mature enough. And it should make you think when you say that, like, is there an actual reason behind the way that they are acting? Have you thought about that? Not saying that what they're doing is right, but have you taken that into consideration? Do you know what their background is? Do you know what their traumas are? Could that be something that triggered them and you're taking offense to it when in reality it's because they literally do not have the capacity to meet
yeah,
you where you are at?
absolutely. And there's a big part as well that how someone acts and behaves has got nothing to do with you. And a lot of and their opinion of you is none of your business because the only thing you can control is you and how you react and what filter you put on your situations.
Mm-hmm.
Not for somebody else to decide that for you. So if someone's having a bad day, decide what you're going to do with it. Don't take it personally because they're having a bad day and they've not said hello to you. It hasn't got anything to do with you. They're so stuck in their head on something else, they've probably not even noticed you coming past. But all of a sudden, your mood's now affected because, well, they didn't talk to me and they didn't say hello. And you've then built it into this big, massive story in your head
Mm-hmm.
because you're having a bad day and you don't know what's triggered it. You don't know what's happening in their life at home, at work, socially, or 10, 15 years ago. We don't have that understanding. We can't just look at somebody and say, oh, that's what it is. Now, I'm sure there are people out there that do see that. I'm not one of them. But I can see that they're possibly in a bad mood. And I think on the flip side of that as well is the emotions. How many words have you got for your emotions? A lot of people, I'm happy or sad. I'm excited or I'm miserable. And not many other options from that is in standard conversation. But if you think about even thinking about the Inside Out film, that the Disney film with the five characters as to
I
the
love
different.
it.
So I've got word lists for emotions for each of the meridian lines. That's 14 meridian lines, and at least 10 words for each of those. They're all different. When was the last time you used a really unusual word that wasn't sadness, anger, joy, despair, all those types of things? We don't understand our emotions very well because part of us that we're not taught them. I mean, the way I was brought up, you bottled it up and you put it to one side. That's maybe a generational thing, but you
Yeah.
didn't talk about these things. So if we can't talk about them and we can't name them, what are we doing with our emotions? And where have they got stuck? And can we
Yeah.
understand that's why we've still got 10-year-old emotions for those situations? Because we've never allowed them to develop.
Yeah. Oh, I love the fact that you brought up that we have these go-to words, and yet we only have like a handful of them that we actually use. And it's so funny because, I think about the healing and the things that I've gone through, and now it's interesting because when I think about using certain words, I realize that they don't always match. Like, are you happy? Oh, I am ecstatic. I am grateful, like I am joyful. I don't have the words to express. That comes up a lot
Yeah.
because you're right, these simplified words that, you know, have been taught, which is just a few, is only the tip of the iceberg. I love that, and I am curious to know if we had more ways to identify how we were feeling, if that would make a difference for
Mm.
people to be able to process their
Yeah.
emotions.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about when you go to the airport or anywhere like that, you've got the little customer services kiosk as you leave, and you press the smiley face, the straight line face, or the frowny face. They've cut it down to three.
Yeah, yeah.
Where else can you go with it? And it is about expanding that knowledge, and maybe go and have a look for emotions charts and see that there's a massive, massive array of words that we could be using to explain how we're feeling. And maybe a challenge for us all to go and do is find one of those word lists and use a different word each day. Which
Ooh,
emotion can you have today?
I love that. What what are three words
Oh,
that
you're
we
going
do
to
not
make
use that might be some of your favorites to go
you're going to
by?
challenge me now.
I am going to challenge you.
Challenge me now.
Maybe.
Do you know, it's interesting with the negative aspects. The word panic, we use that for certain things, but not really for what's going on a lot of the time. So when we might be in terror or we might be in fear, but
Hmm.
when does it become panic? But then panic's just a fun word to say, right?
Okay.
Um, maybe that's just me. Enthusiasm. It's probably quite a common one, but you wouldn't necessarily think I'm really enthusiastic today. That's just how I've woken up this morning and I'm enthusiastic about life. Slightly different to I'm looking forward to, or I'm anticipating, or I'm excited by. That's maybe quite a positive one. And then harmony just feels like a nice, gentle one in the middle. So there you go. Does that work? Does
Oh,
that
I
work?
love that.
Harmony. Let's go for some harmony.
And right, you were so right because I think about like just those three words and the way that we currently use those words in sentences. And panic, I feel like specifically is like when everything has gone to crap and you don't know what to do, or it's something in like a horror movie, right? Like there's panic that has set in. But I could not tell you when is the last time I have ever heard someone use that as a word to describe an emotion. But it makes so much sense.
You might hear it as I had a panic attack, but
True.
actually, maybe you just went through that moment of panic that I couldn't find my key. My silly one this morning, I went through that panic because I couldn't find my phone as I was coming down to my office. And then I realized that the reason I couldn't find my phone is because it was hanging around my neck on a lanyard, but it wasn't in my hand. So I had that moment of panic.
Yeah.
And thankfully, it wasn't a sustained panic.
I have done that with my phone up against my ear talking to someone.
Don't think I've been quite that bad. I love that for you.
I know I did it one time, and I think what it was is I was on the phone having the conversation and I needed to look for something. I was going to use the light on my phone, and I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot find it. I was like, wow, it's right here. Like, I remember laughing so hard. And the other person on the other, I was like, what is going on? And I was like, okay, wait, I got to tell you this because this is fantastic. But you're so right. We do use those terms almost in a way that like belittles them. Like we shove them down to not mean much of anything. And sometimes I wondered, I'd love your take on this, if the reason why we do that is because bigger words that have a bigger meaning behind them scare us. because that means you have to face an emotion versus just saying, oh, I'm just upset. Oh, I'm just sad. Because it's easy to say a simplified term and then blow it off and move on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in Scotland, the general answer to how are you today is not bad. So it's just, I'm not bad. But why am I saying I'm not bad for I feel good? So it's even things like that. You're like, makes no sense. I'm not bad. Or I'm okay. We, and actually we downplay it. So you might be feeling absolutely phenomenal. I'm not bad.
Mm-hmm.
And is that also because we don't want to brag? And I know that the culture between the UK and America is very different from the blowing your own trumpet perspective. And I wonder is there some element of we don't want to brag that we're having a phenomenal day, that we've got out the right side of bed. Breakfast was amazing. We've put on our favourite jumper and it's not got a stain on it. We had no traffic on the way to work, and life is just absolutely glorious. But by telling somebody else that who might be having a bad day, we're downplaying ourselves to help other people feel better. And I'm not saying that's a
Mm.
bad thing to do, but it's also not an authentic thing to do. So it's about finding that balance. But yeah, I think you do have a point there about, well, that's just too scary a concept. I'm not going there. I'm going to stay in the middle. I'm going to keep myself on an even keel. It's got to be between 45% and 55% because anything outside of that is not normal. And people might comment that I'm too excited, or I'm miserable, and I'm not good to be around. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
wondering if there's something like that. And even that the word I use there, enthusiasm, how often is that used as a negative? That
Mm.
child has got so much enthusiasm. Can we not just calm them down and sit them in a corner quietly where they can calm themselves? What's wrong with the child being enthusiastic and eager to learn and want to go and investigate? Even grown-ups being enthusiastic. If you're not feeling it, you can look at them and think they're like a bit of a happy puppy that just needs to be trained. And that might be taken a little bit too far as an analogy, but it is that concept that somebody that comes over to you bounding and so enthusiastic with energy, if you're not on that same vibration with them, you can find it quite draining.
Mm-hmm.
But that shouldn't take away from them feeling enthusiastic and happy. Why do we want to bring them back down to mediocre? Leave them up there. Maybe go up and join them.
Yes, I agree with that 100%. And I love that you said that because I know that for me, especially when I was in the corporate world, I had like one or two things I was normally in. I was super happy. I was always smiley. That was my personality, right? And it still is to this day. And I would be having conversations and I would have, especially when I was in the medical field, I'd have a patient come in that would be really like, just, you could tell they were in pain. And I really did my best to keep the smile on my face because I wanted to bring them up. Because if I could
Mm,
get them out of their slump a little bit, then the treatment was going to go better. The therapy might make them feel a little bit better. And maybe they could leave on a little bit of a higher note than when they came in. But you are so right that it's so easy, especially if you're just having a really, really tough day, to see someone that is on this different vibration and be like, oh, right? Instead of being happy for them or being like, you know what, I'm glad that that's where you are at, And then on the other end, you've got what I used to get called out on a lot was I would get focused. So if I was super
mm,
hyper, like working on something, like there was no real expression on my face, I was just in it, and I would, instead of that being considered like focused and really figuring things out or really loving what she's doing, it became, well, you're hard to talk to. You're kind of standoffish. And I'm like, how am I standoffish? Because if I'm talking with people, I'm lighthearted, I'm laughing, I'm smiling. But because you happen to come in to have a conversation with me when I am like zoned in, you consider that hard to talk to or offensive. And
yeah.
it's interesting how, like you were saying earlier, we create these stories around like this one singular feeling that you get around somebody without taking the time to get curious and to ask questions to see
Mm,
and figure out what's going on. We build our own stories versus actually learning the real story.
yeah. Taking that time to actually be curious. I remember my time in corporate that I was told a number of times it's all about perception. You've got to be aware of how other people see you. So I went through however many years I was in that industry, constantly second guessing myself of, am I behaving in a way that's suitable for the person that's about to walk past me
Mm,
in this workplace? Not about how I'm feeling, not if I'm bringing my authentic self to work, but what is that person seeing? Because I'm speaking to my colleague, does that mean that I'm disruptive? Does that mean I chat too much? Does that mean I don't know what I'm doing, that I'm constantly asking questions? Or does it just mean that I'm friendly and I'm saying hello and I'm having a 2 minute break because I've been really driven and really focused for the last hour and a half and I need to have a bit of a context switch before I get back into it?
mm-hmm,
So that could be so many different stories. So who am I to then try and work out what perception they've got of me? And you would spend your entire time chasing your tail, trying to work out what story have they put on it? What filter have they put on it? Why do they not think my face fits? What's going on here? Who's got time for that? And
it's so
unfortunately, a lot of
draining.
corporate works that way.
Yeah, yeah, that and they don't allow for you to create your own boundaries, right? That's another thing that really comes into play. For instance, I'll use myself as a story. When I worked in one field, I met with a lot of people because I dealt with their onboarding and I did a lot of their training and things like that. But because I ran several different things in that arena, I had to be very cautious and aware of my time. So I had a lot of times for when I would meet with people, and I had a lot of times when other things had to get done. And
Mhm.
the best way of communication for me at that time was generally through email or a work number that you could text me on because I could give you a quick answer and I could keep doing what I was doing. And I actually had a manager one time that said, well, we got a complaint from an agent. I was like, oh, okay. And she was like, well, they've been trying to get in touch with you. And I was like, I tell every single person that I meet with, if you need something immediate, email or text is the easiest way to get me. Because if it is one of my days that I have to focus, I cannot be on the phone solving your problem. And she was like,
No,
well, you have to learn to meet people where they're at. I'm like, no, I don't. They can learn to meet me where I am at because I put my boundaries up front to make sure I get my things done. I said, which means then they also have to be aware of their own boundaries because they are going to be dealing with clients of their own. And what you are teaching them is they should get it their way.
yeah. But interesting, the knock-on effect of that is if you're constantly picking up the phone and answering all these queries, how long is it until that same manager comes back to you and says, why have you not done these tasks? Why is that late? Why is that only half done? Why is
Mm-hmm.
that not done at all? Well, you told me to answer the phone. Which is it? And I think
Yeah.
with a lot of managerial stuff, it's about priorities and it's about boundaries and guidelines and processes and all the buzzwords as well. But if you've not got that structure to decide the priorities of things, then you're going to end up with more than just one small complaint.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So I want to wrap this back into, what you do in your business as well, because you work with the emotions and what the body is dealing with. When you are tapping into and working on what the body wants to heal, what are some of the ripple effects that you have seen with your clients, besides just like the specific pain or whatnot that they came in from? What are some of the ripple effects that you've seen also happen or that maybe they've talked about with you that were not expected?
Okay, and I'm thinking there's one person came to me, he'd not long had a heart attack and he was totally okay when he came to me, he was feeling much better. But the worry around all of that was having massive impact on his life. But what he probably wasn't appreciating as much was the life of his family.
Mm,
And actually, after a couple of sessions, he did come back to me and say that his relationship with his kids was much stronger because he was much more relaxed at home. So that was one aspect. There's other aspects where I've had people come back to me and say that their relationship with their parents has gotten better, that they've now got more time for the people that are around them, that they're more settled in the workplace and they're able to actually bring their A game because the problems that they were dealing with aren't there anymore. So I guess it's that way. I look at things like a bit of an onion. You're peeling back the layers, and in between each layer, you've got maybe a little grain of sand or a little grain of salt, and that's irritating something. And the more layers we peel back that we can clean out between, the less salt and irritants we've got. But you never know where that's then going to lead us to. So you might be coming into me because you're having headaches every week. And the knock-on effect is that because you're not having those headaches, you're much more nice to be around. Your friends are then a bit more a bit better company because they now want to spend time with you. Your
Mm-hmm.
kids aren't scared of you anymore, potentially. I've had one client where the child didn't want to be in the same room as the parent.
Mm.
Actually, because the parent was much calmer, the child was now quite happy just to sit, talk to, be around mum or dad because mum or dad was no longer this ogre in their head. And it's those bits that I love seeing. I love seeing it when, and I've actually had the other way around. I did have one very unfortunate situation where I had a young teenager who was on a suicide watch list at school, and it was a teenager I was working with, but the sister was having challenges because, well, what does that mean, and what bullying and knock-on effects is she getting? The
Mm.
parents are now so stressed and trying to keep an eye on, but not cramping the style of. But how do you get that back? So all of the noise around it settled because the teenager settled, and they were much more comfortable in their own skin, in their own head, in their own mind. And I'm not going to say it was a magic wand and all the problems disappeared, but the big ones did.
Mm-hmm.
And the ability to have conversations again, I think was one of the big wins on that particular case because suddenly teenagers' parents were able to have a conversation and teenager was able to use the words of this is how I feel. This is what's going on for me right now. And they were able to open their mouths and tell the parents, this is what's going on for me. Whereas perhaps before, it's just me, nobody else feels this way, everything's too much for me. I have no support, I can't tell anyone.
Mm-hmm.
So even just those little shifts of actually I can open my mouth, and that's a much better end goal of talking to parent than not being here anymore. So yeah, it can be quite far reaching.
And I love this too. And you made a point that I want to elaborate on and bring back up as well, because you said it's not a magic wand. It may
No,
not fix everything. And we need to remember that, because I feel like there are so many people out there right now that are listening that are teeter-tottering, right? Like, I kind of know I need to do something different, but like, do I really want to? Or, you know what? I'm going to because it's going to fix everything. That's not the reason for doing this. It's not the reason for going into this. What you do need to do, though, is be so aware of the differences that it did make that you hold on to those and you make that so precious and so real that it then can start affecting other things in your life. You
100%.
know, I tell people that with my story all the time. You know, I did a talk yesterday. There was a domestic violence demonstration at a college near me, and I got the opportunity to have conversations with about 15 students that are in human resources and development studies. And I got to share my story. And, you know, I got to go through my abuse and the things that it did and the effects it had on my children. And then I got to talk about like where my kids are at now and where I am at. And I made a point that like, it doesn't mean everything's roses. Now, is my life 95% better? Hell yes. And I still had things that I went through with my teenager a couple of years ago. I still have some things with my 16-year-old that I'm still going through because he's developing. There are always things that are going to ping you. There are always things that are going to happen that are going to come up. But what's interesting is when you work on certain aspects and learn to release, it's like you create this space to be able to have a larger capacity to hold when other things happen. And if you can remember that
Absolutely.
and focus on that versus, well, this should have fixed it, I shouldn't have any problems, then you can start to appreciate what you went through, what you learned from it, and then how you can use it to help you in future situations. And I think that a lot of people need to remember that. So I love
Yeah.
that you brought that up.
And it's interesting on that point. Whenever I start a session, we do the first one we go through your consultation form, the second one we say, what's happened since? These were all the things you came to me that were concerns. Where are we now? And it's really fascinating to see when clients say to me, well, I don't remember that. So the man with the sore toes actually had a groin strain. And I think it was the second or third session he said to me, can we have a look at this as well? I said, yeah, sure, let's put it into the mix. We'll see what comes up. The next session he came back, I says, right, okay, so we're talking about your toes. What's the pain levels like there? How's your groin strain? My groin strain? What would you? Oh, yeah, I totally forgotten about that. But it is that way. Once the problem's gone or the pain has gone, we don't often remember exactly what was going on. So if I think back to the last time I had toothache, I'm pointing here, it was actually the other side of my mouth, I think. And then was it the top or was it the bottom? And was it a dull pain or was it a sharp? What was actually going on? You forget.
Hmm.
I believe that's why people have more than one child. They forget what the pain was the first time round. But yeah, so I think it's fascinating that we forget the pain that we've gone through, and that's not just physical. So if you do nothing else and you don't reach out to somebody like myself, start journaling and take a note of how you're feeling. Put the rubbishy bits on, put the horrible bits on, put the amazing bits on too. And then don't forget to look back to see, oh, that's gone. That's not there anymore. That's interesting. I want more of that. Because you never know what you've gone through unless you have a record of it.
Hmm.
And I think another key thing to remember is that healing's not a spectator sport. So no, I don't have a magic wand. Yes, I do have testimonials that say I did wave a magic wand, but I didn't really. But at the end of the day, I'm not doing anything other than facilitating. I'm translating what your body's asking for
Hmm.
and giving you the tools and the space to move forwards with that. You're the one doing the work. If you're on my couch or you're on my Zoom screen, you're the one doing the work. It's not me. I'm just here to facilitate it. And from that perspective as well, I don't want you to be addicted to me. So I know when a lot of people go to doctor surgeries or wherever they're going and they get a prescription after prescription after prescription,
Hmm.
you can get addicted to a lot of these medications. Now, not all of them, but you can get addicted to a lot of them. Coming to me, you're not going to be addicted. I'd love to see everybody coming back all the time, but that's just because I'm a people person and I like to talk to people. But actually, coming to me once or twice a year, once we've dealt with your major problems,
Hmm.
is absolutely enough. It's that little check-in. I know in the UK we our cars go through an MOT process once a year to make sure that the road's safe, and we put our cars through services, and we probably do even more than that when we've got our pets and they go for health checks and everything else. We don't tend to do it for ourselves. So
Mm.
it's about taking that time to say, right, okay, I'm going to do something now for me and I'm going to look out for me because I've got time right now to keep healthy. And if I don't take time to keep healthy, I'm going to have to take time to deal with being unhealthy or ill or sore or whatever else might happen. So do the stuff at the front and not the last case scenario resort panic stations. Yeah.
I love that. And it's so funny too, because I was recently thinking about this. Like, I really need to make a list of what I have been through, what I have accomplished, and then the goals that I have, set forth. because I talked about them all the time, and it became a repeat in a lot of my conversations. And now that these things are coming to fruition, I'm like, oh my gosh. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, that happened, this happened. And you're right, we do not take the time to really check in with ourselves to see where we were at, where we have come from, and how far forward we have gone. Even if that's like 2%, 5%, we do need to celebrate that, because it is so easy for us to get in the cycle of this one thing is screwing everything up and it's stopping everything. And it's like, but look at all that.
Yeah.
Look at
And,
all of
and
that.
and is it really? That's one. Really? I always like that question with a big, big question mark on the end. Really? But absolutely. My brother teases me for graduating so often, and how you shouldn't celebrate the insignificant things. And I say to him, no, I'm going to celebrate everything. If I'm having a really bad day, I'm going to celebrate. I don't do odd socks. I'm going to celebrate that I've got matching socks on. I'm going to celebrate that I made my bed this morning. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to celebrate that I put my breakfast plates in the kitchen. I might even put them in the dishwasher, but I'm going to celebrate that I've done something. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, okay, that might seem silly and insignificant and all the rest of it. But then when it comes to something a bit more like, I passed that test, I got that certificate, I got a promotion at work, or I got a thank you at work from someone who said, do you know what? You did a really good job on that. Thank you so much. Because it might seem insignificant, but the fact that someone has gone to the effort to sit down and write something to say, well done, thank you, that's huge.
Mm-hmm.
It's worth actually having that conversation and saying, I'm awesome, even if you don't feel it. Tell yourself it.
I love that. And you're so right, because for some people who are really having a bad day, a bad week, a bad month, a bad year, making their bed and getting up to brush their teeth might be the biggest accomplishment for them. Why would you downplay that? Why would you
So,
act like, well, but that's what you're supposed to do? Well, no shit. I get that. And for some people, especially those that are, in depressive states and stuff like that, it's a huge feat for them to get out of bed, to get dressed, to maybe make a cup of coffee. You should celebrate the hell out of that, because that can make a difference in your life. And that's where we have to get rid of these stigmas of, well, but you should do this. Well, but this
yeah.
is normal and everybody does it. So if you're not, you're below that. No, no, I don't think so. You have to find what
What your
aligns with
normal
you.
is.
Yeah. And where you're at in that season, right? If you're in a really tough season, then you can't match yourself to this person that's way up here that's doing all these right things. You need to match yourself to, okay, where do I want to kind of get back to that I've been at before? If you aren't competing against yourself and you're constantly competing against others, you're always going to feel like you're failing in
Mhm.
some space or some regard. And that
Yeah,
is very defeating. And that is one of the reasons why we do downplay stuff and we stay small, because we don't feel like the small things that we have accomplished is
yeah,
enough to be able to tell other people.
absolutely. And exactly as you said, it could be as simple as, not only did I put on matching socks today, they're also clean, and yesterday's socks are now in the washing basket. And it might seem really small and insignificant, but for some people that's huge. And absolutely getting out of bed for some people is difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And celebrate where you're at right now. And I think what I've been talking to a lot of people recently is that I'm not going to take you from feeling really, really rubbish to feeling awesome. My aim at the moment is, if you're feeling really, really, really rubbish, is to get you to okay, or in Scottish terms, not bad. And once we've got you there, if you want to continue working with me, then we'll work on awesome. But there's no point in working on awesome when you're not able to get out of bed, and you're not able to make your bed, and you're not able to brush your teeth, or whatever pain is going on right now for you is so crippling that you can't even see the next 5 minutes. That's for me to come in and say, I'm going to make you feel awesome. You're going to laugh in my face. What I want you to do at the moment is get to a point where you feel comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll take it from there.
Mm-hmm. I love that so much. Well, Angela, I feel like I could speak to you for freaking hours. Well, we've actually done that before.
We
So
have.
as we as we bring it to a close, one thing that I ask all of my guests is, do you happen to have a quote or a piece of advice you'd like to leave the audience with today?
I'm going to come back to that. Healing is not a spectator sport. I think that's such
Mm,
a key one, that we've got to take responsibility. We've got to be on the pitch or in the driving seat, or whichever. I don't do sports. Whichever sporting analogy you want to go for, we're part of it. It's us, because nobody else can live our lives for us. So yeah, healing is not a spectator sport. So get out
mm.
there and play.
I love that. Oh, all right. Well, Angela, please do us all a favor then and share with us, where can everybody find you? How can they connect with you? How can they be in your world?
So on most of the social media platforms, I am at HK. So it's health kinesiology. So HK Inner Pathways. Otherwise, I'm on all the W's, innerpathways.co.uk.
Thank you so much. I love it so much, Angela. Thank you so much for all of the amazing information today.
Thank you very much for having me on. It's not felt like an interview or a challenge or anything else, other than some of your hard questions, but it's felt quite like a fun conversation.
Thank you so much. And to everybody else out there, don't worry, we'll have all of Angela's information in the show notes so that you can easily click and connect with her through there, and definitely follow her and be in her world. And if you took anything away from today, it's start with you and start with
Mm.
the inside of you and match yourself against where you have been and where you want to go before you start going to the outside realms of this world. So I hope that you got some amazing takeaways and some beautiful notes from this conversation. And don't forget, until next time, do one thing positive for someone each and every day and see the difference that it makes in your life. So until next time, have a fantastic day. Hello again, and thank you so much for being a part of the podcast today. If you enjoyed this episode and it brought tons of value, we ask that you please share, like, and subscribe. Your support means the world to us and helps us to reach even more inspiring entrepreneurs who can benefit from these powerful conversations. If you haven't already, be sure to leave a review on your favorite podcast platform, as this feedback is an amazing gift that fuels our growth and helps us to continually improve this podcast. Looking for an extra dose of inspiration and empowerment? Then be sure to connect with me on social media. You can find me at The Lotus Effect, where I share valuable resources and tips while sharing my own journey of being an entrepreneur. And if you're interested in learning more about my coaching programs and services, be sure to check out my website at the-lotus-effect.com. Once again, thank you so much for being a part of Real Chat with Kat. Your presence and support makes all the difference. Remember, whether you find yourself in the depths of the mud or on the path of growth, we all have a unique journey. And just like the lotus, some of us start in the dirtiest of mud, yet as we rise and grow, we blossom into something beautiful, unique, and truly one of a kind. To all of my visionaries out there, keep rising and growing as you create your own Lotus Effect.